Chapter 1. At the wedding, Su Qingyue, dressed in a pure white wedding gown, stood timidly before me in front of all the guests, her intentions crystal clear. "Brother A's, I really like you. Will you marry me? I'm much prettier than my sister, and my dowry is just as much. I truly like you. Let's elope." Although the wedding hadn't officially started, almost all the guests had arrived. The Su family was a prominent family in Jing City, and the guests invited were all influential figures. Now everyone was watching my humiliation. The reason was simple. Su Qingyue, though only an adopted daughter, was spoiled rotten in the Su family. She was even more favored than Su Qingyue, the Su family's biological daughter. Even though the agreed-upon marriage partner was Su Qingyue, it couldn't stop this little girl from crashing the party. The entire venue fell silent. Su Qingyue, accompanied by her family, slowly entered, her expression cold. She was originally dissatisfied with this arranged marriage and naturally wouldn't give me a pleasant look. Seeing Su Qingyue in a wedding dress, Su Qingyue didn't show any displeasure. On the contrary, her eyes were filled with affection. When she looked at me, her eyes were indifferent. "Come on stage, the ceremony is about to begin." Scoffing, I addressed Su Qingyue. "What? Don't dare to say those words in front of your sister?" Su Qingyue, looking unconcerned, repeated her previous words, her voice even louder. As soon as she finished speaking, I smiled playfully, gently lifted the little girl's chin, turned to Su Qingyue, and said with a cold expression, "Are these the Su family's manners? As Mrs. Liu, shouldn't you give me an explanation? I never hit women, but that didn't mean I would give the Su family face. They still dare to play these games with me. Truly courting death." Su Qingyue tried to remove my hand from her chin, but how could I let her have her way? I gripped her neck, my gaze fixed on Su Qingyue. I sneered. "The Su family's most beloved adopted daughter? A joke." Su Qingyue's face had turned pale, and she kept hitting my hand, wanting me to let go. Su Qingyue also became somewhat annoyed and grabbed my wrist. "Lu Zhe, are you crazy? This is a wedding. Do you know how embarrassing this is? Qingyue is still a child. Do you have to make things so awkward over a few jokes? Besides, the Su and Lu families are joining in marriage, and she's also a part of the Su family. If you like her, I'll respect your decision." How generous. Even at the wedding, she was thinking of replacing her biological daughter with her adopted daughter. Such sisterly love. After she finished speaking, I sneered and released my grip on Su Qingyue's neck. "Su Qingyue, don't play this sisterly love act with me. Our Lu family's 20 billion investment is real money. Are you playing this switched-at-birth game with me? If you don't want to go through with this marriage, just say it. No need for this drama. Just an adopted daughter. I know what the Su family is up to." With that, I pushed Su Qingyue aside. "Settle your Su family matters yourselves. Otherwise, there's no need for this marriage. Do you think this marriage is only beneficial to your Su family? There are plenty who want to marry into the Lu family. If it wasn't for your grandfather begging me tearfully, insisting on delivering you to my bed, you wouldn't even have this opportunity." After saying that, I left directly, abandoning all the guests, and went straight to the back. Chapter 2. My parents were waiting backstage. They already knew what happened, and despite me showing no respect to the Su family, they simply smiled and didn't blame me. "The Su family is going too far. Well done," I scoffed, sat on the sofa, and lit a cigarette. "Our Lu family isn't some nouveau riche family. The Su family is treating us like fools." Their plan was obvious. Deliver a substitute, a so-called adopted daughter, for marriage, then use the scandal of me having an affair with my sister-in-law to control me. Later, they could easily discard the adopted daughter. After all, Su Qingyue is their only remaining biological child. As a prominent family in Jing City, the Su family does have the capital. But in recent years, they've been continuously suppressed by other powerful families, and their situation has worsened. To expand overseas and inject capital, they had to resort to marriage alliances. And our Lu family was the best choice. They want the Lu family's resources and funds, but they don't want to give anything in return. Now they're trying to manipulate us with an adopted daughter. Do they really think the Liu family is a pushover? Even a dog would laugh at such a suicidal move. But their calculations were wrong. Our Liu family isn't from Jing City. Our main businesses are abroad. After 3 generations of hard work, we've built a vast empire. As the next successor of the Liu family, I've already started taking over the family business. In an environment where Chinese people aren't particularly welcome, I've carved out a path for myself. They really think I grew up in a greenhouse. When it comes to ruthless tactics, the Su family is still lacking. If it weren't for the alluring domestic market, I would never agree to a marriage alliance with the Su family. Frankly, there's not much about the Su family that I respect. Perhaps the older generation was capable, but Su Qingyue, Not long after, someone brought news that the Su family patriarch had appeared. But with Su Qingyue crying and Su Qingyue consoling, there was no intention to continue the wedding for the time being. I wasn't in a hurry. If they wanted to put on a show, I would play along. There were Su family members outside the door, trying to probe my bottom line. Childish. Dad, this marriage probably won't happen. There's no need for the investment either. Let's see which other young lady in Jing City is willing to marry into our family. We can just switch to a different marriage partner. All right, since the Su family doesn't know what's good for them, there's no need for us to lose face. Soon, the sound of retreating footsteps came from the doorway. My father took a sip of tea and said disdainfully, "Couldn't even sit still? How pathetic. If they have the guts, they should keep it up." I playfully fiddled with the ring on my finger. What can they do? They don't want to lower themselves, but they also don't want to lose the investment. Isn't that pathetic? Chapter 3. The wedding should have started long ago, but the Su family hadn't made a move. Clearly, they hadn't figured out what to say. Unwilling to have their true heir marry me, they had no good excuse for switching brides at the last minute. Soon, my father received a message. It was from the Su family patriarch, saying he wanted to discuss the matter, as Su Qingyue was making a fuss and insisted on marrying me. He also said that Su Qingyue was also a child of the Su family, and hoped I would agree. I didn't speak, and naturally my parents didn't reply either. The Su family's face? How much is it worth? Since they were unwilling to honor the marriage alliance, then the wedding wouldn't happen. I called directly, and Su Qingyue answered. Judging by the sounds, there were quite a few people there, most likely on speakerphone. Without giving them a chance to speak, I issued an ultimatum. Within 5 minutes, Su Qingyue, you come here and apologize. And Su Qingyue, you kneel down and apologize too. Otherwise, there's no need for this marriage. Your Su family's overseas assets are currently reliant on the Liu family, right? It's fine. Withdrawing our shares is a quick process. And I can responsibly tell you, those investments are doomed. Don't expect to see a single cent back. You know I have the ability. After speaking, I hung up, ignoring whatever they were saying. What's the point of talking to people full of schemes, since they didn't intend to cooperate properly? Let's see who can outsmart whom. Before the time was up, the door to the lounge opened, and the Su family arrived, their faces grim. I sat on the sofa, making no move to get up. Su Qingyue, with her usual expressionless face, stood before me. Without a word, the two of us were in a standoff for a minute before she reluctantly spoke. I'm sorry, I wasn't thoughtful. I turned my gaze to Su Qingyue. The young girl's face was pale, but she stubbornly bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes. With a thud, she knelt down. I'm sorry, brother-in-law. I like you too much and caused you trouble. I smiled, though it was somewhat fake. Qingyue, I know you're just spoiled. It's okay. In the future, I'll find you a husband no worse than me. You should restrain your temper in the future. I'll hire some tutors for you. Su Qingyue naturally understood what I meant. She looked pleadingly at her family, but received no response. After a while, Su Qingyue gritted her teeth and forced a fake smile. Thank you, brother-in-law. Seeing the Su family's humiliated expressions, I smiled genuinely. With your current desperate need for investment, you still thought you could manipulate me? Good. Since there's nothing else to resolve, let's not delay the auspicious time. Qingyue, let's go. Chapter 4. The wedding was a complete success, making me the talk of the entire Jing City. After all, opportunities to see the Su family humbled are rare, especially by someone like me with no foundation in Jing City. Now everyone is waiting to see the Su family become a laughingstock. The Lu Corporation's investment was already a coveted prize, and the Su family still tried to play their little games. They didn't expect to encounter someone like me who doesn't play by the rules. I don't care what the outside world says. I only need to know that the Su family is now tied to the Lu family's chariot. That's enough. That night, Su Qingyue sat quietly in the bridal chamber, still wearing that indifferent expression. I chuckled and turned her face towards me. What? Still resentful about this marriage? Then why didn't you refuse from the beginning? Why are you giving me this deadpan look now? She stared at me stubbornly, showing no sign of compromise. Lu Zhe, I already have someone I like. If it weren't for Grandpa's insistence, I wouldn't have married you. Wouldn't it be the same if you married Su Qingyue? Why did you have to marry me? You've ruined the rest of my life. I hate you. I'm telling you, you can only have my body. You'll never have my heart. Scoffing, I ripped off her outer garment, revealing the lingerie underneath. Amidst her gasps, I coldly told her, "What a brilliant plan your Su family has. Trying to trade an adopted daughter with no inheritance rights for our Lu Corporation's investment. Are her nether regions studded with diamonds? And you, I'm not interested in your heart. You just need to do what a Mrs. Lu should do. I don't care who you have in your heart, but if I find out you dare to betray me, you know the consequences." Without giving her time to react, I pushed her onto the bed. The next day, ignoring the tear-stained face of the still-sleeping Su Qingyue, I summoned all the villa's servants. There were people from both the Lu and Su families, each with different expressions. I didn't bother with pleasantries and got straight to the point. Some of you have impure thoughts. I can overlook it this time, but from now on, keep those little schemes to yourselves. In addition to your salary, each of you will receive an extra 10,000 in allowance every month, paid by me personally. Understand what I mean? Then I stared at them expressionlessly. The ones from the Lu family naturally had no problem and immediately pledged their loyalty. The Su family servants exchanged glances, but ultimately couldn't resist the corrosive power of money and lowered their heads. I was satisfied with this outcome. Waving them off to their duties, I looked up to see Su Qingyue standing on the stairs with a complex expression. She must have heard everything. I shrugged indifferently. We Lus have money. We bribe people openly. Come down if you have something to say. Don't just stand there, making it look like I'm bullying you. Su Qingyue didn't want to come down, but yesterday's lesson was still fresh in her mind, and she didn't dare to defy me yet. Seeing her awkward gait, I couldn't help but chuckle. The Su family's upbringing wasn't great, but to sell their daughter for a good price, they preserved her virginity. Quite thoughtful of them. Lu Zhe, you've already gotten what you wanted. Why are you doing this? Is our Su family that despicable in your eyes? Raising an eyebrow, I pulled her pretty face closer, making her flustered. What are you thinking? I just want to avoid any discord. After all, we're husband and wife. It wouldn't be good to have conflicts because of some servants. Since we're all living in the same villa, it's dangerous if we're not on the same page, don't you think? Watching me spout nonsense with a straight face, Su Qingyue didn't bother arguing with me on this point. It was pointless. It was better to get straight to the point. When will your Lu Corporation's investment arrive? I smiled. She was really anxious. It seemed the Su Corporation's financial situation was worse than our investigation showed. That's why they kept giving in and retreating. The investment? It still needs further assessment. After all, we only reached a preliminary agreement. The specifics still need to be discussed. You're the Su family heir. Surely you understand this, right? Also, with your unwilling performance yesterday, what grounds do you have to discuss this with me? Under my relentless questioning, Su Qingyue finally lowered her proud head. I'm sorry. My attitude was wrong. I'll pay attention in the future. I'll be a good Mrs. Lu according to your requirements and won't have anything to do with other men. Whenever you want, I'll satisfy you. Regarding the investment, please expedite it. The Su Corporation is facing difficulties recently and urgently needs the capital. I beg you. I smiled. This woman was quite practical. But did she think this would make me inject capital without asking questions? Our Lu Corporation's money didn't grow on trees. I pulled her into my arms, my hands not staying idle. She was a pristine beauty after all. Even though we were sleeping in the same bed with different dreams, it didn't stop me from having her fulfill some of her duties as Mrs. Lu. All right, the investment can be in place tomorrow. But our Lu Corporation's managers will be stationed in the Su Corporation. Every investment decision needs to be approved by the Lu Corporation. Remember, every single one. After hearing my words, Su Qingyue's face turned ugly. The anger that had been suppressed for the past 2 days finally erupted. Lu Zhe, isn't your Lu family going too far? Your Lu Corporation's people stationed in our Su Corporation? How can you be so excessive? Does our Su family still have any face left? Seeing her anger, I wasn't annoyed at all. I lit a cigarette and looked at her playfully. Su Qingyue, this is going too far? Your Su family is quite hypocritical. This is a business marriage. We delivered on our promise of overseas market share. What about you? Did you deliver on the promised domestic market resources? I'm just taking what I'm entitled to according to the agreement. Is that excessive? If you still want this marriage, then stick to the agreement. If not, we can get a divorce today. With that, I stood up and forced her chin up, making her look into my eyes. I know you're not satisfied, but your thoughts don't matter to me in the slightest. Don't even think about using those lovey-dovey things to make me back down. Think carefully about what your Su family has left. If you agree, come talk to me. After finishing, I left her alone in the villa and went out. There were still many things to do today. Chapter 5. I'm not one of those love-struck fools who'll throw everything away for a woman. For me, Lu Corporation's interests are paramount. I don't have time to deal with the Su family's mess. I've been incredibly busy lately, trying to break into the domestic market. The marriage alliance with the Su family was solely to expand our market share. Now that the goal's been achieved, I need to seize every opportunity. Who knows when the Su family will try to trip me up? Ignoring the Su family these past few days seems to have worked. Cooperation with other parties has been smooth, though their gazes do carry a hint of inquiry. Since the Su family is being so sensible, I'm not unreasonable. I told my assistant to make an initial investment of $500 million. After all, I still hold Su family shares. There's no need to provoke them too much. Of course, their recent behavior makes me uneasy. I still need to take precautions. To prevent the Su family from getting any ideas, I had a contract sent over a bet. If the Su Corporation doesn't reach the agreed profit within 6 months, not only will subsequent investments be canceled, but the initial investment will be converted into Su Corporation shares. According to the manager I sent, Su Qingyue's face was livid when she received the contract. She looked like she wanted to eat me alive. But what does it matter? The contract is signed. Didn't she agree? My assistant looked at me with concern. Mr. Lu, this is the Su family's turf after all. Aren't our conditions too harsh? Could they lash out? I laughed nonchalantly. No, that's how you deal with the Su family. They're a pack of wolves. If you're strong, they fear you. If you're weak, they'll leave you with nothing. They look down on Lu Corporation. They're probably thinking about how to swallow us whole. What's there to discuss with people who are ready to backstab you at any moment? Ultimately, it's because Lu Corporation has always been overseas that these established elite circles in Jing City look down on us. They think we're just a dog they raised, that we can't break into the domestic market without them. Any hint of resistance from us is seen as rebellious, even though everything I'm doing is within the terms of our previous agreement. They even try to pull some tricks with the marriage alliance, a superficial bond. Screw them. Money talks. A near-bankrupt family still acting like a big shot. However, my actions have had an effect. The Su Corporation's crisis is gradually resolving. Su Qingyue is afraid of me now, or rather, afraid that I'll withdraw the investment. She's working tirelessly every day to adjust the Su Corporation's management according to my requirements, returning to the villa exhausted every night. Chapter 6. After everything was on track, I remembered that troublesome Su Qingyue hadn't been dealt with yet. Old Master Su sent someone to inform me that Su Lianyue's graduation ceremony was going to be held. According to the Su family's plan, it would be a grand affair, held at the Su family's old mansion. I nodded and let Su Qingyue run around making preparations. She was just a pawn. I'd let the Su family jump around for a bit. I wouldn't let this ticking time bomb stay here anyway. At the banquet, Su Qingyue held my arm, wearing a bright dress and smiling happily. Su Lianyue wore a red haute couture gown, glittering with jewels, still playing the role of the Su family's most beloved little princess in the eyes of outsiders. The Su family really went to great lengths to sell her at a good price. At the banquet, Su Qingyue and I appeared together. Everyone's eyes were probing, but no one dared to speak. Clearly, they still remembered the scene at the wedding. But soon, they had no time to dwell on that. I didn't bother with the banquet itself. These kinds of events were just excuses, mostly for business. I left Su Qingyue and circulated with a glass of wine. The people who had previously resisted cooperating with the Lu Corporation were now actively coming up to toast me. After all, in the past half-month, Lu Corporation's development in Jing City had been quite good, and the Su Corporation had given its full support. After a round of socializing, the businessmen were even happier because I had thrown out quite a few orders. A perfectly good graduation banquet had become my business banquet, and more people came than I expected, which was great. After a few drinks, I made an excuse to go to the garden for some fresh air and to clear my head. I had reached agreements with many people, and I needed to keep up the momentum. Suddenly, I heard whispers from the doorway. It was a few distant relatives of the Su family, whom I had met a few times before. Unexpectedly, this Lu family is quite capable. Their development has been rapid recently. What's the use? In the end, they're still working for our Su family. A small-time outsider trying to make waves in Jing City? Impossible. Exactly. Once we stabilize things, we'll make them spit it all back out with interest. The Su family's benefits aren't so easy to take advantage of. After listening, I just smiled. It seemed all my previous precautions were correct. The Su family had never had good intentions. Stabilize things? It depended on whether I gave them the chance. The Su family was a Jing City powerhouse, yes, but they had long been in decline. If it weren't for their remaining connections and the fact they could offer more benefits than other powerful families, did they really think the Lu family would look favorably upon them? These distant relatives didn't have any valuable information. When I returned to the main hall, the Su sisters were putting on a sisterly affection show. Su Qingyue looked at Su Lianyue tenderly. Lianyue, today is your college graduation. I wish you success in your future work and that you can contribute to the development of the Su Corporation. She opened a jewelry box, took out a necklace, and put it on Su Lianyue. It was something Su Qingyue had specially bought at an auction, worth millions. A smile appeared on Su Lianyue's lips, and she looked at me with tenderness in her eyes. Brother-in-law, have you prepared any gifts? It seemed the Su family hadn't given up. Seemingly harmless, it was a trap. If the gift was too expensive, they'd say I was interested in my sister-in-law. If I didn't give one, they'd say I lacked manners. I smiled and clapped my hands. My assistant brought the gift I had prepared. On the tray was a simple document. Su Lianyue opened the document with a puzzled look, and then her face was filled with disbelief after seeing the contents. I smiled slightly. Lianyue, you're still young and need further education. I know you're a good student and eager to repay the Su family's kindness, but you must learn the necessary skills first. I've applied for a master's program for you at Oxford University in the UK. You must study hard. After I finished speaking, Su Lianyue's face changed dramatically. It was quite a sight. A forced smile masked her helplessness. She knew very well that she was just an adopted daughter and had no real interest in studying. Everything she did was to make money and secure her future. She also hoped to marry into a wealthy family, while the Su family still had power, to live a life of comfort and ease, even if it meant being just a trophy wife. My move had shattered her fantasy. Heh, I didn't care if she was happy or not. Once I threw her abroad, we'd see how obedient she was. If she was smart, she could stay in the UK for a few years and then come back or settle abroad. If she wasn't, then I'm sorry, I had plenty of ways to throw her into a Commonwealth country. For example, some African Commonwealth countries would be nice. I could even arrange a marriage for her. A prince from Black Africa would be perfect. Dare to drop out early? Then I'm sorry, her living expenses would be cut off, and she'd be on her own. I assumed she understood this and accepted it through gritted teeth. Then, thank you, brother-in-law. The atmosphere at the banquet started to become strange. The Su family once again became the laughingstock of Jing City. Old Master Su was also at a loss for words, his smile stiff. His eyes darted away when they met mine. He knew this was my revenge for the wedding. I smiled faintly, saying nothing, playing the thoughtful brother-in-law. The Su family's plan was well calculated. Their positioning of Su Qingyue was no different from the thin horses of Yangzhou. It would be best if she could marry me directly, and if not, she should at least cause me some trouble. Then, they could seize the Liu family's investment while I was embroiled in scandal, ideally getting rid of me altogether. But they were overthinking it. I wasn't someone who couldn't control himself. How could I give up the Su Corporation's profits for something like this? There were plenty of young women around, and I didn't need such an expensive one. Especially since this opportunity was perfect, the Su family couldn't refuse. Chapter 7. After Su Qingyue was forced to accept the admission notice, I immediately arranged several tutors for her. There was no room for refusal. Besides overcoming the language barrier, she also needed to catch up on some foundational knowledge. Although she had studied management before, she hadn't actually learned anything. Most of her grades were bought. Her schedule was completely filled by me, leaving her no opportunity to hang around me. Su Qingyue was anxious, seeing that I was completely focused on work, but I lightly brushed her off. Qingyue is your sister, and seeing how close you two are, I don't want her to waste her life. You wouldn't want others to laugh at her, would you? Although she's adopted, she's still a member of the Su family. Learning properly will allow her to better contribute to the Su family, won't it? These were all her own words. I simply returned them to her. Seeing my smiling face, she couldn't really say anything. The Su family, accustomed to wielding their power, seemed to have forgotten how we, the Liu family, build our own empire overseas. Their vision is limited to their own small world, thinking they can act with impunity by relying on some powerful connections. However, I don't care what she thinks. I'm very busy. Chapter 8. Over the weekend, I received an unsigned invitation. Raising an eyebrow, I had a pretty good guess who it was from. The meeting place was a hot spring resort with a pleasant environment and a high degree of privacy. Recently, Liu Corporation's branch in Jingshi had been developing extremely rapidly, making some people uneasy. Liu Zhe, you're here. A woman with a cold and elegant appearance gracefully walked over. I looked at the newcomer with amusement. Onchi, I wonder why you asked me here. After all, it's rather inappropriate for a man and a woman to be alone together. The newcomer was Su Qingyue, Su Qingyue's aunt. Old Master Su was quite the playboy in his youth, and even in his old age, he was still quite active. Su Qingyue was one of his unforeseen consequences. Although she was Su Qingyue's aunt, she was only 2 years older than her. As an illegitimate daughter, she had always been unfavored in the Su family. She gave me a captivating smile, her icy demeanor melting away. She was truly beautiful. She handed me a tablet, gesturing for me to open it. Inside was a video recording. The scene appeared to be in the Su Corporation building. The main characters were Old Master Su and Su Qingyue. The old man, abandoning his usual amiable facade, had a vicious expression on his face, his voice laced with malice. Why haven't you gotten Qingyue into Liu Zhe's bed yet? Su Corporation is practically going to change its name to Liu now. You're useless. Hurry up. You must make Liu Zhe stop infiltrating Su Corporation. Su Qingyue hung her head, her face also filled with resentment. Grandpa, Liu Zhe is completely different from the rumors. He's not very interested in women, rarely spends time alone with them. There's simply no opportunity. And he keeps a tight grip on those investments, not giving me any openings. I've been trying my best to please him these days, but he won't budge. The old man sneered, slamming his fist on the table. He's just an outsider. How much ability can he have? There's no man in this world who isn't lustful. He's the sole heir to Lu Corporation. Since he's unwilling to let go, then we'll swallow Lu Corporation whole. Leaning back on the sofa, the old man let out a sinister laugh. Since Lu Zhe isn't taking the bait, then get rid of him completely. Didn't your father make Ningyu's mother disappear back then? You know all about that incident, don't you? Do you know what to do? I smiled playfully. I knew about that incident. It was news at the time, but it didn't cause much of a stir. It seemed the Su family was getting desperate. The video ended there. Su Ningyu's cold voice rang out again. Lu Zhe, this is first-hand information. It was recorded just yesterday. I looked intently at this woman. I could tell she wasn't naive. Her bikini perfectly showcased her cleavage, clearly an attempt at seduction. I touched my nose awkwardly. I hadn't been very sensible in those years, and I had messed around quite a bit, but I really wasn't that desperate. Su Ningyu had lived with her mother until she was 12, then was taken back to the Su family, where she was never treated well. Within 2 years, her mother died unexpectedly, but she hadn't pursued that matter at all. Instead, she worked like a dog in Su Corporation, keeping her head down and acting submissively, except when it came to the matter of arranged marriage, which she fiercely resisted. She had been one of my potential marriage candidates. I lay back lazily in the chair, looking at her with a half-smile. What do you mean by showing me this, Annie? Su Ningyu chuckled, not bothering to beat around the bush. She stated her demands directly. Join forces with me. I want revenge, and I want a Su family. After it's done, 20% of Su Corporation's shares will be yours, and those investments will be returned in full with interest according to the agreement. Or, keeping the above conditions the same, I'll marry you, and Su Corporation will become a subsidiary of Lu Corporation. Think it over. Unexpectedly, her offer was quite generous. I couldn't refuse. I don't trust you. Su Ningyu wasn't surprised by my words. She opened a file and gestured for me to look. After reading it, I was silent for a moment. Finally, I gently wrapped my arm around her waist. Deal, fiancé. Chapter 9. This collaboration wasn't a loss for me. Even with only 20% of the shares, combined with what I already held, I became the largest shareholder of the Su Group. Of course, for Su Ningyu, revenge was the most important thing. Su Ningyu's mother was driven to death by the old man's son, and he even attempted to use her as a tool for a political marriage. Her status in the family wasn't even as high as Su Qingyue, the adopted daughter. Su Ningyu was strong and capable, securing the position of manager in the Su Group, but she was also a thorn in Su Qingyue's side. This was her best and possibly only chance for revenge. However, I didn't act rashly. Just like before, I busied myself with work at the company every day. I would often pester Su Qingyue, for fear she wasn't studying hard enough. Occasionally, I would bully Su Qingyue, enjoying the way she was clearly angry but forced herself to act submissive. The effect was excellent. Su Qingyue would even take the initiative to come to me, acting like a newlywed wife. This went on for another 6 months. When the investment matured, the Lu Group took the lion's share of the profits. The old man of the Su family couldn't sit still. It said he flew into a rage that day, nearly cursing Su Qingyue to death at home. Useless. It's been 6 months, and you still haven't come up with a solution. That money was earned by our Su family, and now it's been given away for nothing. He apparently ran it for an hour, and Su Qingyue's face reportedly turned black. I laughed heartily when Su Ningyu told me about it. I knew exactly what the Su family was like long before the marriage. However, Su Ningyu also warned me, Lu Zhe, you need to be careful. My father's methods are ruthless. Now that you've increased your investment, he'll likely act soon. I raised my wine glass and clinked it with hers. Don't worry, that short-sighted fool only resorts to dirty tricks. He doesn't have much real ability. If it weren't for him, the Su family wouldn't be in this situation. I invested and took the money that belonged to me. That's only right. Now that the Su family's crisis has been resolved, their ulterior motives are resurfacing. Su Ningyu agreed with my assessment. Exactly, he only plays dirty, but you must be careful. I don't want to be a widow. We chatted pleasantly, and exchanged some information before parting. We couldn't meet frequently. There were quite a few people watching me. But Su Qingyue was certainly capable. She even found out that the old man wanted to get rid of me by staging a car accident. It seems she has quite a few resources at her disposal. Since I learned about the Su family's plan to eliminate me, I've been very cautious. I only have one life, and I can't afford to take any risks. Every time I go out, my car is inspected by professionals. I never let the Su family touch it, not giving them any opportunity. Now, it seems I need to create an opportunity for them. Chapter 10. Su Qingyue's intel kept coming, completely matching the information I had. The Su family was about to make their move. Lu Corporation's recent expansion has been aggressive, almost completely devouring Su Corporation's market share. Today was a good opportunity. Su Qingyue was preparing to go abroad, and the Su family was holding a family dinner. There was no reason for me not to attend. As husband and wife, even if Su Qingyue was unwilling, she still had to maintain appearances. Under my insistence, she reluctantly got into my car. Before, she would never have gotten in my car, and I didn't bother to care. Just before we left, my assistant stopped me. "Mr. Lu, something's come up." The bank called, saying there's a problem with the loan, and they need you to handle it. I glanced at Su Qingyue and told her to go ahead. Although Su Qingyue was unhappy, she didn't dare say anything and had to take my car and leave first. Her own car was being serviced. The old man of the Su family had personally arranged everything today, even keeping his own granddaughter in the dark. After Su Qingyue left, I got into my assistant's car and headed towards the bank. I knew about the loan issue. I'd known for 3 days. It was just a matter of signing a supplementary contract. After I'd slowly dealt with the matter, before I even left the bank, I received a call from the police. "Mr. Lu, your wife has been in a car accident. The situation isn't optimistic. Please come to the hospital immediately." I hurriedly agreed and, while still in the car, arranged for someone to call the hospital, speaking generously. "No matter the cost, make sure my wife is cured." When I arrived, the old man of the Su family was already waiting outside the operating room. When he saw me, his eyes were filled with hatred. I didn't try to comfort him. As I was about to ask the nurse about the situation, he stopped me. "Lu Zhe, did you do something? Why was there a car accident?" "Qingyue is the sole heir of the Su family. You're just after the family fortune, aren't you?" He tried to hit me with his cane, but my assistant blocked him. I looked at him coldly, and after a long silence, I spoke. "Grandpa, Qingyue's accident is something none of us wanted. Even if you're anxious, you can't slander me. Besides, I just came from the bank. I didn't have time. Don't worry, I've already had Lu Corporation contact the traffic authorities. We will definitely find out the truth." My gaze was cold, and the bodyguards behind me also glared at him fiercely, like they were looking at a murderer, making him look a little guilty. Su Qingyue, who had rushed over, quickly supported her father. "Dad, no one wanted this to happen. Don't be too upset. The police will investigate this thoroughly." As soon as she finished speaking, the old man's face darkened even more. He slapped Su Qingyue several times, forcing her head down. No one around dared to breathe. Su Qingyue lowered her head, enduring her father's outburst. "Do you think that with Qingyue gone, it's your turn to inherit the family fortune? Let me tell you, I'd rather leave it to Lin Yue than give it to you. Recognize your place. You're just a bastard." With that, he ignored her and left. Su Qingyue and I exchanged a look, neither of us speaking. But we both saw something called ambition in each other's eyes. Su Qingyue originally had a brother and a nephew, Su Qingyue's father and brother. But 5 years ago, they were killed while gambling on the high seas. The old man was furious and used all his power to investigate, wanting to find the murderer of his heirs, but to no avail. After all, the forces behind those who could run casinos on the high seas were beyond the Su family's reach. All of this was written in the information Su Qingyue gave me last time. What wasn't written was the truth behind it all. That one of Su Qingyue's good friends was a member of the family behind that casino. Chapter 11. Su Qingyue's injuries were too severe. Despite the hospital's best efforts, she passed away. Upon receiving the news, the Su family patriarch looked at everyone with an impassive expression. His eyes were full of calculation, but from now on, those calculations would remain just that. Because the Lu Corporation had reported him. The Lu Corporation actively cooperated with the police, submitting evidence related to the car accident involving Su Qingyue's mother. Based on this, the police quickly broke through the driver's psychological defenses and invited the Su patriarch in for questioning. The truck driver was psychologically fragile. He had cancer and had taken the job for money to give to his wife. Now that he had completely messed things up, there would be no money, and his family would even have to pay a large sum. After calculating the losses, he immediately sold out the person who hired him, hoping for leniency and to avoid implicating his family. The Su patriarch was still trying to struggle, but unexpectedly, Su Qingyue reported him. She also produced a video. In the video, the Su patriarch gently stroked Su Qingyue's back, his face full of a sinister smile. "Grandpa, what if something happens to my sister this time? She's the only heir to the Su family." The Su patriarch still retained the charm of his younger days. "Qingyue, if your sister is gone, you can stay with Grandpa. The children you bear will still be the Su family's heirs." With this, the Su patriarch's involvement in hiring someone to commit murder was undeniable. Su Qingyue and I watched quietly, and after cooperating with the police investigation, we both left the police station. After all this, we were both very tired, but we still had to deal with the aftermath. After all, this incident had already affected the Su Corporation's stock price, which was directly related to our interests. I wonder if the Shun family has the honor of continuing the marriage alliance with the Lu family. The current situation was a hard one. Looking at that ice-cold beauty's face, I smiled. Naturally, my fiancée. As soon as I finished speaking, I smiled playfully, gently lifted her chin, turned to look at Su Qingyue, my face full of indifference. We returned to the Su family's old mansion. Su Qingyue was already waiting at the door. Seeing Su Qingyue and me get out of the car, she opened her mouth, wanting to say something. Before she could speak, I spoke first. "The Su patriarch has been taken away, and Su Qingyue is dead." She nodded, completely losing her former arrogant demeanor, like a downtrodden wife. Besides, I had no idea she had reported the Su patriarch. This wasn't part of my plan. "Why?" She was silent, and after a long time, she spoke. "I don't want to go abroad. I know I'm just a caged bird raised by the Su family, but I don't want to sleep with an old man like Grandpa. I'm a girl too, and I long for love. They won't leave anything from the Su family to me, and legally, we don't have an adoptive relationship." After speaking, she handed me a document and continued. "This is a notarized statement. I will no longer appear as the adopted daughter of the Su family. Everything about the Su family has nothing to do with me. Can you let me go?" I looked at her deeply. This woman was clever, but I never intended to target her, as long as she didn't provoke me. I exchanged a glance with Su Qingyue and took out an agreement. "You're quite impressive. Whether you go abroad or not is your decision. This is a gift agreement with the same conditions as your notarized statement. In return, you'll receive these assets as compensation, including 50 million in cash, 2 apartments for shops, and of course, the jewelry the Su family gave you also belongs to you. Are you satisfied?" Su Qingyue was stunned. She didn't expect the conditions I offered to be so generous. I just smiled, and Su Qingyue didn't object. This was what we had discussed. Spending a little money to eliminate future trouble was worth it. After all, the Su Corporation's value was in the billions. Thank you, Mr. Lu and Ms. Su. I'll sign it now." Looking at Su Qingyue's attitude, we were very satisfied. These assets were enough for her to live a comfortable life, as long as she didn't do anything foolish. As for the Su patriarch, there was no denying his guilt. All that awaited him was endless imprisonment and a single bullet,